In 2017, the then CEO of GitHub and co-founder of GitHub, Chris Wanstrath, actually said, "We think," and I'm quoting, "we think the future of coding is no coding at all." All right, so today for our main segment, we are going to be talking about something that I think is interesting and something that's been getting a lot of press in the last year or so. And this is something called the no-code movement. I think, and I've said this for a long time, even pre-pandemic, that talking to computers is probably the most valuable and vital skill anyone needs to have in the 21st century. So much so that a lot of people have said, hey, like I'm an artist, I don't do digital media. Do I really need to know to talk to a computer? And my answer is yes, absolutely. And by talking to computers, I don't mean programming as such. As long as you're able to understand how to, operate a computer, get a computer to do certain things, you qualify under that. And for instance, even if you are an artist, you still need to have like social media presence, maybe set up a website. And really that's what I mean by, being able to talk to computers. I think the pandemic really sort of accelerated it, where small kids, for instance, like the one in the photo, had to attend classes via Zoom. And it still breaks my heart that some of these kids have to sit in like a school uniform and attend classes via Zoom, as unfortunate as that is. But even elderly people had to really sort of learn to operate Zoom, just to do basic things like keep in touch with your children or attend a wedding and things like that. I think the internet really has democratized a lot of skills. For instance, if I have to make like a basic song, all right, I can just fire up GarageBand, add like a guitar track, a bass track, like some crappy drums, quantize all of them, do like crossfade, and I can actually make a very generic, bland sounding track in like, say, a couple of hours. If I had to do that the old school way, it would take like years to like really learn an instrument, learn how to record, be able to afford like equipment to do all of that, and then hope that all of it goes well. I think the same goes true with things like movie editing, with adding a filter for your photo, for instance. And I think it especially is true for something like programming. Ironically, in the early 70s, when computers started becoming a thing, the only people that could talk to these computers or use these computers were programmers, because there was no UI as such. It wasn't as user friendly as it is now. So only people who could code could actually get something done on the computer. Things, of course, improved and it became a lot more user friendly and a lot more inclusive. And here we are. I actually remember using things like Microsoft Front Page and Dreamweaver to build websites back in school. I remember this was like a summer school type thing. And this was actually my start of using a no-code tool. A no-code tool essentially is just that, which allows you to do something that you typically need to know programming without the use of programming. And honestly, it's been around for a while. Like I said, MS Front Page and Dreamweaver are easily 10, 15 years old, or maybe even more. But it's really gotten a huge push in the last few years. In fact, literally today, I went to producthunt.com. If you haven't heard of it, very big in the startup community. And today's top hunted tool or product was something for no code. In fact, all it did was list out different no code tools. In 2017, the then CEO of GitHub and co-founder of GitHub, Chris Wanstrath, actually said, "We think," and I'm quoting, "we think the future of coding is no coding at all." In fact, even Ryan Hoover, who's the co-founder of Product Hunt, has written a lot of articles on no code and has invested his money into no code as well. So the point of today's session is to really sort of break down what no code is, why it's big of late, and whether it really is the future of programming. And I have some experience in trying to build a platform for no code as well, so I'll share that too. In a sense, how it works is essentially simple. You typically have something that looks like a drag and drop interface. So something like this. This is from a tool called VoiceFlow. So you're essentially just using drag and drop, like in a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editor, where you say, if a user says this, do this. If a user says that, do that. You can add conditions. You can add, things like captures and so on. This is another example of a famous tool called Bubble, where someone's making a web page, and instead of knowing HTML and CSS and JavaScript and responsive design, you just click and drag things. You drag this thing for like to add a Google map, you add a text box up, and it takes care of the rest for you. Why people actually use no code is two main reasons. The biggest, of course, is it opens up the door for people to build programs that don't necessarily know programming. Right now, to build an app or a website, you do need some programming knowledge, but with a no code tool, you can, as long as you can talk to a computer, like I said, you will be able to actually build something. Apart from that, though, companies still use some no code tools to do things like build prototypes. Even like an engineering team will whip like a quick prototype up to show their marketing or sales or leadership. So it is useful there, and because it also gives you like it needs fewer dependencies, it gives you a faster path to launch, and of course your production costs are lowered as well. Why I think this is interesting is, does it really give you the same sort of power or same sort of control that a programming platform will give you? And essentially, from my experience doing so, what we set out to build at a startup that I worked for was a chatbot platform where anybody could try and build a chatbot. And what we started with was something called an IDE, or an integrated dev environment in the browser. So you need to know coding, you start coding in the browser, you build a chatbot. We actually got feedback saying, hey, a lot of people building these chatbots aren't technical. They're building like a catalog chatbot or something that is very informational, and they're from the marketing team. So, none of this works for them. So we went back to the drawing board. We built a tool similar to what I showed you earlier, something that looked a lot like a flow chart where you could just click and drag few things. It would, you can say if a user says this, do this, a very, very complex if-else statement at the heart of it. The feedback we got was, hey, this is great, this is good, but what if this is a chatbot? So what if a user says something like, hi, what's up? Or, can you help me? Or anything out of the ordinary. We were like, so we have to add something like a global variable, then sure, threw it in there. The next piece of the feature request we got was, hey, we actually need to query our website for the price for this particular thing, and that keeps changing. What can we do? So like, this is actually like an API call, so we'll probably have to write that in as well. Like, okay, great. All right, but now we also need to store some user data and store prices with that user data. Can you get that done? So we're like, that's pretty much like a database call and an API call to that database. I think you see what I'm getting at, right? With the no-code tool, we were able to build something within like a lot of constraints, but the minute you have to go a little out of it, you actually end up needing some programming knowledge. And honestly, that's where we really failed. We weren't able to translate that particular barrier to completely no code. That was something that we found very, very difficult. There are tools right now that are actually trying to do this really well, and I'm going to show you a few of them. So you can see these are some of the top no-code tools right now. As you can see at the bottom, there's AppSheet, Power Apps, and Honeycode, all of them belonging to big tech. So AppSheet is a Google acquisition. They bought it in 2020. Power Apps is a Microsoft tool, and Amazon released Honeycode last year, and it's still in beta. There are a lot of tools like Bubble, for instance, which I just showed you, which actually give you the power to do things like API calls and things like that. But at this point of time, I want to make a distinction between a lot of these tools. I'm sure you've heard of IFTTT, or if this then that, which again is a very conditional driven no code tool. So you can say something like, if the weather in Amsterdam is more than 30 degrees, send me a mail, and you can hook up like things and it would do so. Very, very cool. I want to draw a distinction between those type of tools and tools such as Shopify and Substack. Now, the reason Shopify and Substack are bunched with the other no-code tools are that they are platforms which allow you to do things that typically needed code to do. They are not coding platforms as such. Shopify is an e-commerce platform. So if you want to build an e-commerce website, you can integrate Shopify into that experience without too much code or with no code, and you'll have like a complete seamless end-to-end e-commerce experience on your site. Similarly, with Substack, you can get a complete newsletter with subscription, with free tiers and premium tiers, completely without any code. Those are listed here because, again, just to make that distinction, to build something like this, you earlier needed code. The interesting thing is these sort of tools are actually doing really well. In 2020, in the first 3 quarters of 2020, Shopify actually did $80 billion gross merchandise value. Again, that's $80 billion worth of gross merchandise value. That's clearly some sort of disruption. And of course, it was helped thanks to the pandemic, where people were shopping online a lot more. Similarly, Substack was launched only in 2018, but in 2020, they completely exploded. And we don't know the number of users, but if you've noticed, they've completely disrupted Medium.com's model. No content creator or no writers doing Medium.com anymore, because everyone's actually moved to Substack, where the monetization is taken care of and people are actually earning money. So going to where are we all heading with Nocode? And on the show, we have something called the hypometer, where is this really hype and do you need to believe in it, or is this cold? Well, in the hypometer, I actually am going to call the no-code future very lukewarm. I don't think no-code is going to replace programming. In fact, I think as the days goes by, we'll see a larger chunk of the population being programming literate. I think kids are learning programming a lot more, and much earlier as well. And I think that's a good thing, because like I said, being able to talk to computers now is so important. So no code is not going to replace programming. It will continue to have its niche uses. And I think the tools to do no code programming will get better as the days goes by, but it's not going to replace programming. I still like it though, because it's going to bring a wider range of people who can really interact with tech and build. Engineers don't have the most it's an old stereotype, I know, but engineers don't have the most creativity. So you typically need like a co-founder or whatever. So hopefully this will allow people to build, a lot more creative tools. That being said, I think tools like Substack and Shopify, which sort of take that entire stack and say, hey, we'll take care of all of this. You don't need any coding. You can focus on your writing or your e-commerce experience. Those sort of tools are going to be huge from now on. That's a typical SaaS disruption, where you're giving a service that typically needed a lot of grunt work and you're saying, hey, we'll take care of all of this. You can just go ahead and focus on your core business value. So if you're on the side of a creator, like you're a writer, look out for tools like Substack that can bring you the users and take care of the tech. Or if you're on the side of creating products like this, really look at how you can improve that experience for creators. All right. Yeah, that's it from me. Stay safe. See you soon. And thanks again. Bye.